Loud. And we are live if you want to go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much, Matt. First and foremost, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone that's out there. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dr. Simeon Sanders, hailing all the way from Essex, Maryland. Joining us today is our friend Matt McCorkle from Clear Choice Learning Systems. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we've heard it loud and clear that, certainly with, anytime new technology is introduced, especially when we get a new graphical user interface, GUI, anytime something along those lines comes along, there's always a learning curve. It doesn't mean that much has changed. What it simply means is that we have to learn how to navigate a little bit differently. We have to learn how to operate a little bit differently. And there's certainly been lots of chatter regarding how to use this system, how to make things happen, and how do we make sure that we are doing what we can for the students, one for the students that you serve, as well as, for the tutors that you serve. Because at the end of the day, when working with tutors, we want tutors to operate efficiently and effectively, and we don't want them to waste their time trying to figure things out. So I reached out to Matt, certainly kind of leveraging some of the experiences that I've had working, doing, UX testing in a previous life, certainly before Tutor Doctor. And I say, hey, Matt, have we ever thought about doing some type of global training? Hey, let's recognize it. You guys know it. Operating a small business of your own, sometimes it's just one of you or two of you. I believe the same thing happens with Clear Choice. It's only a couple of folks that are operating it, plus some developers, and maybe they just don't have the time or just don't have the bandwidth. And so certainly we want to leverage that experience, pull together as much as possible. The great thing, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are not here, guess what? This is being recorded just for you. So you don't necessarily have to reach out to Matt for any additional training. What Matt and I came up with is, what does a day in a life look like for a tutor? From the time that the tutor gets the client, practice test, you name it. And I believe that a variety of our questions are going to be answered. And so certainly we hope to be in a better posture after this particular session to service our tutors best. Once the recording is done and published, what the Tutor Doctor IATDF is going to do on your behalf is we're going to push this out through the Z only page for you guys. That way you can take it, link it, hyperlink it, send it to all of your tutors. And that way in their own time, they can certainly go on and learn everything at their own pace. And we know the great thing about recordings, we can always hit pause, rewind, and look at it all over again. That being said, I'm going to go on mute. I'm going to take my screen out of this, and I'm going to hand this over to Matt. Take it away.
Thank you. That's fantastic. First thing I should say is you're really good at this. That was a great intro. For anyone who doesn't, for any of you whom I haven't already met, or if you haven't already met me, my name is Matt McCorkle. My brother and I started Clear Choice Test Prep back in 2006. We've been doing SAT and ACT prep really ever since, and we've been working with a number of franchisees since about 2013, and a lot more since, I don't know, about 2 years after that. So what we do obviously is we make available the branded workbooks. Whoop, got one more jumping on. The branded Tutor Doctor workbooks for SAT and ACT. We also have all the suite of online tools. That's a portal where your instructors can log in, your students can log in, and typically speaking, that's used between sessions, not during the session. It's not something you necessarily need to log in during a session. So I want to get that out of the way right off the top. The piece that I want to make really clear as we get moving forward is today is going to be all about the software. But I'm going to answer, I got a whole list of frequently asked questions. I'm going to try to knock those out, but I'm also going to try to give it a little bit of a narrative here. So we're going to talk about, a day in the life of an instructor. What do I need to do with a new student? What do I need to do before a session, during a session, after a session? And what are the things I need to know in order to make the decisions I need to make when I need to make them to deliver an exceptional test prep experience? So, again, Simeon, thanks for the intro. Thanks everyone who's here and anyone watching the recording. I'm going to give my contact info really quickly. You can get a hold of me. In fact, Simeon, there'll be a follow-up with this or no?
Yeah, we'll do a quick, I'll do a follow-up, and when we post it, I'll actually
Perfect.
include all of your contact information
Got it.
for those that may not be using it and want to talk to you a little
Sure.
bit more about purchasing.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So let's do this then. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen right now. Let me share this window, make it a little more window shaped, and share screen right here. Share. And somebody give me a yes if you can see that window.
Yes.
Boom. All right, here we go. So I'm not yet logged in. I'm just showing you, first of all, the URL you need to go to, both as an instructor or a student. You can log into your specific portal through, it's going to be your domain, or sorry, the subdomain for your Tutor Doctor webpage, .tutordoctor.myprepcourse.com. You don't need the login there. Tutor Doctor, I know you can remember My Prep Course, that's us, that's the actual site. And then the first piece there is that's going to be the URL of your business in general. There are some exceptions where somebody has asked us to change that. For the most part, that's going to match perfectly there. So as an example, I'm going to click over here where I'm logged in as Simeon. I've, just so we're clear on what you're actually looking at here, I'm logged in as me, a little my admin account here, and then I've also I'm impersonating Simeon's account here. So I'm logged in to his essex.tutordoctor.myprepcourse.com site. So that's where you're going to send all your students to do that. And he's got obviously a whole bunch of SAT students, a whole bunch of ACT students. Right off the top, there are different types of accounts, and I want to make that really clear. There are student accounts. When a student logs in, they're going to see the student side of this thing. When an instructor logs in, they are going to see only the students with whom they're working directly. And when anyone with what we call management permissions logs in, we've got another person jumping on. When anyone with management permissions logs in, they will see all of the tutors and all of the students at that location. So what you're able to see is a function of what your account type is. You're going to have, as an owner, you're going to have management permissions. You're going to see everyone at your location. Your instructors that you create, typically you're not going to give them management permissions. They're only going to see the student that you, or students that you have assigned directly to them. So on the dashboard page, you're going to see a summary basically of how you're doing, what's going on in your company here. In terms of number of, we call them leads here because it's a little more of a business page, but these are inactive student accounts. These are accounts that have been created. They're allowed to take one free practice test and score and analyze that, sit down and close the sale with the family to get them onboarded or to get them into the system. Current, that's going to be active students. Those are the ones who you've actually activated the account to get them started. And past would be students that their course is over and done, that they are still in the system. You haven't archived them there. And then some basic stats on how that's going. Dashboard's pretty simple for all intents and purposes. It's just some basic information there. We do have a category, another tab called What's New. We post there regularly when we add new features, things like baseline score, managing parent emails more easily. Another one we did recently was the partial test scores. So you can create a score report for just one section of a test instead of having to enter the whole thing before you can enter that. So check that out when you get a chance. What's New is always there for you. There's also a What's New for students, but it obviously only tells them things that are relevant to students if there's something relevant to students. Speaking of students, I'm going to talk you through your menu here on the left first. You got your dashboard, which again, you're not going to spend a whole lot of time there. It's kind of a big, 30,000 foot overview of what's going on. You can see your SAT and your ACT. I'm going to go down here to students. Once I click on that, what I'm now seeing, again, I'm logged in as Simeon. I'm seeing all of the students, both active and inactive, specifically for SAT, because I've got this course selection tool selected SAT. I can do the same thing for ACT, in which case now I'm only seeing all the students who have been, who have an account either active or inactive for the SAT. And what you're going to see is the grayed out accounts. Those are students who are enrolled in the ACT, but it's not yet been activated. I'm going to get to what that all means in a second. If you ever feel like you have a student you're having trouble finding, the place to go is right here where it says all. And that's going to show you, these are all of your students who have an account and which account they have. So in this case, we've got Practice Phyllis has an ACT account. I could manage that, enroll in another course, and add the SAT if I wanted to. That's free to do because again, it's going to show up as, I'll save that. It's going to show up as a, let me go back dashboard, back to students. It's going to show up as an inactive account. And then I can always go from there to whether I want to activate it and actually get them into the course itself. So for the most part, a lot of you regionally are doing a lot more of one test or the other. So it's good to have that filter. What you're seeing right now is, again, everybody at the organization who has an SAT enrollment. I can search through that if I want to. So if I wanted to search for Alan, for example, that's going to give me just that first one. I looked down to see what the first one was, and that's going to show me where that student is. I can also, again, I can search for anything to locate students there. I can also search again if you have more than one location for this account. For those of you who have more than one franchise territory, you can have permission to see both of those. So you can actually see students at multiple locations. You can check your classes if you've got any classes going, and you can search by the name of the instructors to see only the students who are owned by one of those instructors. So what you're typically going to do as an owner is, if you're logging in, you're going to check on some of your active students, see how things are going in their course. I was just clicking on a few of these. I was just poking around a little bit ago. So I can click here. This doesn't look like the student was actually entering the answers for a lot of these things, but we do have a fair number of practice tests here that have been completed. What you're going to see for a course that is in action is, let's see, here's a student who's done a whole bunch of work. We've got, this is, let's see, I don't actually know the pronunciation there. Bader. Yep. All right. So what you're seeing is a quick summary of how that course is going. Looks like we got one overdue lesson, 6 practice tests that are listed as overdue, no worksheets. We've got 5 tests that are completed, 89 lessons done. These are all the stats that just give you a basic idea how the student's doing. And then down here at the bottom on the summary page, we've got strengths and weaknesses. And this is really the bread and butter of what our system delivers. We have tagged every question on all of the real practice tests, and we've tagged all the questions in our own proprietary curriculum so that every time a student answers a question, we find out something about that student's proficiencies. Is this student struggling on that concept, or they got it down? And with that in mind, you can always check here to see, as an instructor, what should we be working on right now? Where's this student actually struggling? There's a more detailed way to do that. If I go over to tests and I click on, let's see, I'm just gonna click on one of these. Oh, so this student's actually from a couple years ago, it looks like. I can go ahead and preview a score report for this test. And we're actually gonna see a more detailed view of that. If I click here, I'm just gonna accept that. And what I'm giving you a sense of here really quickly is where we find information about this student. Oops, let's save that. And what that student needs to work on. So as an instructor, typically what happens is there's the inactive account is created. They take the free practice test. That's the sort of leads generation onboarding. Once the account is activated, there's a conversation between an instructor and the owner or the educational director, whoever's making that sale. The conversation sounds something like this. Here's the score report. This is the student's initial score report. So we're going to take a look at where this student left points on the table. And in conjunction with that, there's right, wrong, skipped. Down here, you can see where the student left points on the table. That's going to tell us what we need to focus on. And that combined with what we sold them, basically, are we dealing with, 16 sessions or 20 sessions? Are they an hour? Are they 2 hours? What do we sell them? That's going to tell us what that course needs to look like. And so as an instructor, this is kind of where we pick up in the process. A lot of things happen before the instructor really gets involved. At that point, owners, this is up to you. You're either going to have the conversation with your tutor saying, hey, I need you to lay out a course consistent with this score report and this many hours of tutoring that will, roughly speaking, end right before this official test hosted by SAT or ACT. And the idea is that those are the parameters for the course. Got one more joining. Welcome. So what you got then is everything you need to cover is more or less defined in this document from that initial practice test. So there's 3 ways that we break down those concepts. The first is mastered topics. So in this case, these are topics that the student scored really well on, 100% or at least 75%, I think is the cutoff for those. The orange is going to be topics we call topics for review. And what that means is you scored between 75 and I think 50%. Those are the places where you demonstrated some proficiency, but you left a lot of points on the table. This is going to be where we're going to try to focus the majority of our attention, at least to start the course. So where are those topics where the student has the underlying skills to answer these questions, but they're just not getting all those points, into their stack. And then the last one is topics for instruction. If we scroll down, you'll see inference question. We got 1 out of 4 on that. We're really struggling on that. This is where it's a judgment call. If that's a topic that you think you can teach quickly and easily, and in inference question, you can make sure they understand the mechanics of the question, that may help them substantially on that one. So that's probably a good one to add to your priorities. But if this was something like polynomial long division, and this student hasn't taken any advanced math courses, then you're in a position where, do you really want to try to teach that student another semester of math just to get them up to speed on maybe 2 or 3 more questions? So that's where it comes to topics for instruction. Generally speaking, those are not priorities. Generally speaking, topics that are mastered are not priorities yet. They will be. But topics for review, that's where you're going to want to really start hammering right out of the gates. So armed with that information, we're ready to lay out a course for that student. And I'm taking for granted that you're already able to log in as an instructor. I'll cover some, and when we get to some frequently asked questions, I'll actually go over the exact process of getting logged in and setting your password and doing all those things. But I'm going to go, and Simeon, you can tell me if you think this is the right direction here, or if you want to see me pivot real quickly. I was hoping to start with, we've got a brand new student.
Yep. That's where I was starting. Yep.
Perfect. All right. So the background I've given you is we made the sale. We know what we sold them. We know what they need to work on. How do we get it on the page? What do we do as an instructor? Keeping in mind that in some cases, the owner will actually take care of this whole piece, and you'll just need to know when to show up for your first session. Now, if you're involved in this process, here's what it looks like. First, we need to create a new student. I'm going to do that really quickly for you. I'm clicking here. We've got, oops, that's a new test. I don't want a new test. I want students, new student. I'm going to go first name. This is going to be live demo student. I don't need an address right now. The student will need to have an email address entered in that field before they'll be able to log in, because that's their user ID. So you will need that later, but if you're doing like a live, practice test you're hosting for a bunch of students, you don't have to have that information for every student right away. Good idea to get it, but if you don't have it, you can still create the account. So I'm going to go ahead and add an email here. We'll just say fake email at email.com. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and click, I can assign an instructor if I want to. I don't have to do that right away. If I was adding the student to a class, I could do that. A couple other things, these are all mostly optional, but I can, course start date, course end date, target score is important. If we know the student's trying to hit a 1250, that'll calibrate the chart so that it won't look like they went from here to here because they didn't go anywhere close to a 1600. So that's a fun one to actually enter. The baseline score allows you to basically establish where that student is starting. So they took a test last summer, you've got that information. You don't have to punch in all the answers, you just give a description and then the score per section and it'll set a baseline for you. Typically speaking, you want to send the welcome email. You may not want to. You may want to do that a little later. I'll give you the rationale for that decision really quickly. If you want the student to have immediate access, for example, you've assigned this test, they have a copy of the test, they're going to take it online, or they're going to take it remotely and then punch in their answers, then you want to give them access so they can do that. If you haven't yet assigned a test, like if you have a student who signed up to take a free practice test on this Saturday at a live event, you don't want to send that welcome email yet because students has the opportunity to log in. There's not much for them to do. They're just kind of sitting in an empty account. So you may want to wait and send that later. In this case, I'm not going to send it because this is the fake email, literally. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And we're creating a new student account. So that was email, I think I wrote. Okay, cool. So here's my new student account. It's sterile. There's nothing in there. First thing I can do is I can click on that student. Reminder, going back to that previous screen, to find what you're looking for, use the search to find that student you're looking for. You can narrow it down with any of these, but the easiest way is just to type in, first name or last name or their email, whichever one is most unique. You think you'll be able to narrow it down the most. The two things I can do with this account or this card, I can click here to, as a student, view their account and start taking actions like assigning things. Or I can click here, and this gives me some options. I can impersonate the account. So I would click here and literally it will open in a different page that student's account, and I can start demoing some things, which I'll do in just a moment. I can also email the student, edit it, or archive. Archive does not delete the student account. It just takes it so it won't show up in your results here unless you click filters and show archived. So if you have a bunch of old students, and I guess, Simeon, I'm talking to you. If you have a whole bunch of students on that screen that you'd rather aren't cluttering up your search results, you can go ahead and archive a few of those. I'll go ahead and click on the student to show you that this is where you're going to spend a lot of time as an instructor. You're going to see exactly what's going on with this student. Let me click back over here and do this. Okay, so on the summary screen, you can see nothing has happened. We got all these stats, nothing's going on there. All I have are two tabs available to me. I've got tests and I've got account. So on account, that's what you've already seen. Same thing, we could update any of that information. Nothing we need to do there. I can click tests and add a new test. Remember, inactive account, you can assign one free practice test, but that's it. You can't lay out a template. You can't assign lessons, worksheets, or additional tests. That's why you only have two tabs here available. Once we activate that account, which the owner of the company or the tutor doctor owners, that's a thing you're going to do. You can outsource that to your instructors, but you'd have to share the license codes with them. Again, we'd click here to activate. We'd punch in the license code, and we'd click OK, and that actually activates it. That's when you're going to see all the other tabs pop up. That's when you've paid. That student is now available for everything, or everything's available for that student. So I'm going to go ahead and click New Test. I'm also going to move this over here. Sorry, looks like I had a question from Chris. If we archive students, will their scores and improvement still be factored into overall? The answer is yes, I believe. I don't recall what data and score improvement metrics and graphs exist. The short answer is that would still play into your dashboard. So you'd see improvement by points, where you'd see a distribution of how your students are doing overall. And it would also, there's things you can do, like there's some class reporting, and there's actually, we have some really cool interfaces that are coming out soon that are replacing these card views, that where you'll be getting a lot more of those statistics that are what do you call that? Aggregate statistics. Good question, but archiving them does not remove that. There's a separate feature to do that is not currently activated, but right here, you could check that box to exclude the student from statistics, which if you wanted to, you could archive that, or you could remove them from your statistics there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I believe that makes sense. Hey, Matt, and just for the purposes of the demo, just so that we keep the flow kind of really moving.
Yep, got you.
By all means, keep all of your, jot every question that you guys have. That way at the end, Matt can go through and pretty much answer them one by one. And that way it doesn't take off, you know.
Got it. Then I'm
going
to close the chat window so I don't get distracted. And assuming if something super relevant pops up in there, you keep an eye on it for me.
I will watch them. Yes, sir.
Thanks. All right. So circling back to what we are going to do to start with this student. I mentioned in order to know what to lay out on the course, we need a test or a score report. You don't 100% have to have that, but it's a really good idea to start with that for a variety of reasons. The biggest one is you can't account for all the improvement you delivered if you don't have that benchmark. So I'm going to go ahead and click New Test. What you're going to see is that I have the opportunity to either assign a new practice test or enter real test scores. So if you're aware that the student, this is the feature we just added, if you're aware that the student just took a test 2 weeks ago, you can enter real test scores. You're not going to punch in the answers. It's just subject scores. And that'll, again, just put a starting point in there. Otherwise, we're going to assign a test. I can go ahead and click, okay, what day was this taken? I'm going to say it was taken, oops, not 3/5. Let me go back. I'm going to say it was taken last Saturday, 10:30 a.m. is fine. I'm going to set the due date, which means it's automatically due 1 week from the time it was assigned, but I can change that if I want. These are all versions of the test. These are all down here are the 10 official practice tests that are available through College Board's website. And then in addition to those, we have what are called QAS tests. These are all tests that are available online, various places. They've been released by the College Board. And I want to draw one quick important piece for you as I'm assigning this. First, I'm choosing to assign all 4 sections. There's 2 math sections. We count independent sections. There's 3 subjects, 4 sections. 2 of them are math. When you assign a test, you get to choose which sections you want to assign. Generally speaking, for that first one, you want to assign all of them. Later in the course, you may want to say, hey, you're struggling with the math and your pacing needs to improve. I'm going to assign just, the 2 math sections this week. You can still get a full score report for those sections. Won't cause any problems there, but you can assign just those. And then if the following week you wanted to add a couple sections, you can edit the test details and add sections to it. And now they've got access to 2 more sections. You can't remove sections later, but you can add them. Just something to keep in mind for giving them additional practice later in the course. I'm going to click here to make it a timed test. I could also exclude this from improvement calculations. I don't want to do that. That's useful in the case where you have a student who is really struggling with a new strategy or a new approach to critical reading, for example. And you want them to just do your best, take all the time you need, just make sure you're really deliberately going through the steps. Well, you may not want that in your improvement calculations so that they don't just spike on week 2 or 3 and then crater again and get an anomaly in the data. So I'm done choosing the test. There it is. I'm going to click save. And what you're going to see is that I've got a practice test assigned to the student. Reminder, that's it. That's all we can do for this student at this point until it's been activated, or until the account's been activated. Now, when we assign it to the test to that student, let's see, going back to the student side. Oops, right here. This is my live demo student. I'm going to go back and impersonate that student really quickly. And again, I mentioned that feature earlier. It's a hugely important feature. When you see the student's card, you'll see the full 3 dots. You click there and click impersonate. What that does is it opens up a new tab in your browser where you are able to see exactly what that student sees when they log in. So if they say, hey, I'm having trouble with this, or I can't find that, you can check and see exactly what they're seeing to walk them through that really quickly if you need to. So here's what we're seeing. I've got a to-do list. It only has one thing on it because, again, I can't assign worksheets or lessons yet. It's a free practice test. My summary screen's got nothing. Strengths and weaknesses, nothing. What's new, nothing. So my to-do list is all there is. As we assign more work, it's all going to show up there on the to-do list. I can click here to begin. And what you're going to see is that I have the opportunity to click on the first test section, begin. It's going to start my timer, letting me know I have 64 minutes left. Now, quick caveat about this, or a quick note about this. Yes, it's a timer. It's not that useful, and I'll be totally honest with you about that. I would rather that they're using whatever timing device they're going to use during the real test, keeping in mind they can't use a cell phone, or any audible timing device, or a timing device that makes noise. Now, they're going to punch in their answers here. The best practice is always going to be take the thing on paper, bubble in the answers on paper, punch in your answers, in a batch at the end. And the reason I say that is we don't want to confound the testing data by having them try to solve things either on the screen. Think about how you would solve a math problem on a screen. You're probably not going to touch your pencil. Probably just going to go, I don't know, B. Not the way we want them to practice. So take it on paper, bubble it in on paper, and then just come over here and bubble in your answers as a student all at once. So the students can bubble in their answers. When they're done, they click submit test section. It's going to say, hey, you sure you're done? Yes. Done with that one, ready to take the next one. Alternatively, on the other side, I can click as an instructor to see my view of the student's account. Click on tests. Here's that test. I can click on it. It's going to show me which answers the student has punched in, and in this case, already submitted. I can edit this. So I can go back through, and you wouldn't want to change their answers necessarily, but I can go ahead and I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4 to just hammer in a bunch of answers. You can also use A, B, C, D, E in the case of the ACT, or F, G, H, J, K, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whatever you want to do to punch in those answers, you can do that as an instructor. And again, that's useful, especially in cases where you've got a bunch of students taking a practice test and they just submit their answer sheets at the end of that live event. You can do that, or you can have them punch in their own answers. I can now download a partial score report, which is, you can imagine I just punched in all the rest of those answers. We're going to, in the land of make-believe, we're going to move ahead to where I now have that score report that tells me what I want to work on with this student. Questions about that whole process? Simeon, anything you want me to hammer on there?
No, nothing there. And there's nothing in the chat regarding it.
Outstanding. Or everyone's making coffee or something, so that might be good. All right. Again, I can download that practice for the score report, which if I'd entered all of my answers, this is a full score report showing section scores, right, wrong, skipped, and gives me indications of what we want to prioritize. So where I'm going with this, oh, interesting. This student actually really struggled with the informational graphics and citing text as evidence. Two of those that are, we got sections in our workbook for that. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back to the instructor side. That's the student side, instructor side. I'm not going to enter all of these answers. I've already submitted that. I'm just going to exit out here. And if I go to summary and come back to tests, you'll see, let's see, this is my new demo student. So I want to go to, I guess I need to activate the student before I can do anything else. So this is the piece that, through the magic of having more than one computer monitor, I'm going to copy and paste a code. We'll cross that one off so I don't try to use it again in the future. And here we go. License codes for owners. I think you all know where to go to get those. Because this is probably going to be viewed by instructors, we're going to skip that piece, but I can obviously answer that. Unless, Simeon, if you, we'll work together. We'll hammer out a follow-up email with like, hey, here's all the links we mentioned and here's the contacts and stuff. But that's the thing you buy separately. They get emailed to you, copy and paste them in, they're single use. So I just activated that student account. Keep in mind, I've activated the student account, but that student, live demo student, has an SAT account that is active, does not have an ACT account because I haven't created that or enrolled the student in that or activated it. So the activation codes are good for one test or the other, not both. At this point, we want to lay out that course for the student. There's a couple of ways we can do that. We can either go to lessons, we can search for individual lessons we want. We can sort by page number, so we have, you know, the book in order. We can click here to check all and just assign everything with no due dates. That's a thing some people do. It's not necessarily what I recommend, but if you have a student who is, you know, very low touch, you can do something like that. And if they're super highly motivated self-study people, you can just turn them loose on everything with no due date. And every week or so, you sit down with them and go over what they worked on. We don't usually have those kinds of students. So the easier way to do this is to put together a much more structured course. The way to do that is go to the calendar. And I'll point something out really quickly. Course templates as a tab. It's really, you'd go there if you wanted to create your own template, or if you wanted to view a little library of templates. It's really not that useful as a tab or as a menu item. For our purposes, you're going to want to hang out in calendar, because that's where you can go to apply a course template. Applying a course template does all the work for you. Instead of having to click on each day and add a session and then add a lesson or series of lessons and then add worksheets and tests, it's going to lay out everything for you. That said, again, if you're a power user, you can go here and say, oh, I want to assign those 4 things, or we'll just do all of reading unit 1. So we'll go, there we go. Assign selected and continue. Choose the date, add a due date if you want. I'm going to actually go back and close. I don't actually want to assign all those because I'm about to do the template, but you can go item by item or batch assign a bunch of lessons or worksheets to a day. Easiest part is right here, apply course template. Now, these are all, because I'm logged in as Simeon, what you're going to see is a whole bunch of templates that have been created by various tutor doctors. Simeon, would you make a note? We should go through, or I should go through, and some of these should be pulled off that people have created various templates that are, you know, one session with no work. It's probably not worth having as a as a template there. So there's a few we should filter out for you. Speaking of filters, I can go here and search for either organization, which means it was created by a tutor doctor, or I can go here to built in, and I can click there, view results. These are all templates that we've created over at ClearChoice that, you know, map out a course you may want to deliver to a student. For our purposes, I'm going to go ahead and say, let's do a 24-hour course. Now, we've improved this interface a lot, so you can see, roughly speaking, what you're going to be covering there in terms of the percentages, the distribution of the material. And right here, I can preview. Oops, I actually clicked on the 30, so I'm previewing the 31. But what you're seeing is day and session, what you're going to be covering, day and session, what you're going to be covering, and so on. But this is all totally editable. So down here, we've got the 24-hour course, select and continue. All I have to do is choose the day I want it to show up. So we'll say, actually for our purposes, I'm going to move it into the past a little bit. I'm going to say it's Wednesday now. I'm going to say we started it February 24th, 25th. I'll say right now, yeah, I'm going to make it in a little bit there. Let's make it in the past. And I'm going to change the timing to 2 hours. This has no bearing on the content on each day. It doesn't squeeze things out into the next session. It's just for your notes, like how long a session is. I'm going to go ahead and automatically set the due dates, which means that everything that shows up on one of these days, I'm going to make it a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. Everything that shows up on Monday will be due on Wednesday, and so on. I I can edit all that later, but for our purposes, that's a really good start. I also can make exceptions to that schedule. And this is the last step, and then we've applied our template. I can say, right, yeah, but we got that dance on Friday. So kid's not gonna be able to make it. So we're actually gonna meet on Sunday that week. I can make whatever exceptions I want. Let's take a whole week off. We'll be doing this here. And I don't know, maybe there's a test on the 9th. I don't. Point is, we can make sure we end where we want to end. We can take any amount of time off. We can spread it out however we want. I'm going to go ahead and click apply template. And you can see that very quickly, it has laid out all of the sessions and all of the lessons. Now, templates can be saved that include worksheets as well. However, most of our built-in ones don't have any worksheets. The idea is that worksheets are supplemental. They're your opportunity to take a student who demonstrated some issues on lessons and needs some help. That's where the worksheets sort of help build them back up on the concepts there. So I've got a course template all laid out. If I want to see a different view of it, it's actually pretty handy. I can see what's covered on each day. You can see all of these throughout the month. Or if you prefer the calendar view, you can do that. Now, if I want to make some edits to this, and this is the critical thing to get across to your tutors, these templates are typically a pretty ambitious workload. And by that, I mean, each of those lessons, so we got the green icon as a session, the orange, these are all math lessons. Each one of these is a chunk out of the workbook. So if I want to see what that looks like, I can click there and click answer sheet to actually see it. This is going to open the actual pages out of the workbook. So the PDFs are built in here. You can print them, you can download them if you want. You can see all the correct answers, and you can even watch video solutions yourself as an instructor. Let me click on one of those. So the idea here is that as an instructor, you can very quickly prepare for lessons. You can also see the exact pages of the workbook, make sure you know what you're doing there. But you can also look at this and say, 6, okay, we can get through that. 9, that's a pretty heavy workload. Well, looking back at the student's test, I know we had trouble with infographics. That was one of the things I saw. So I'm actually going to prioritize that one. So and again, I'm not sure this is necessarily what I would do, but infographics and paired passages, and let's do a homework drill. I'm going to take those and I'm going to reschedule selected to any other day I want. I'm going to, for whatever reason, I'm going to make that something we're doing today. And it's due, I'm going to change the due date so that it's due on the 9th. And reschedule. Are you sure you want to do that? I do. And so what I'm doing is I'm load leveling a little bit there, but mostly I'm just prioritizing some of the things that I notice the student really needs to work on. But I may have also noticed the student has absolutely no trouble turning a word problem into an equation. So we're going to get rid of translating word problems and solving linear equations. Let's get rid of, get rid of that one. Again, this is all just sort of playing around. I'm going to delete selected. Keep in mind, you can delete all if you want, and you can reschedule all if you want. So this is really easy to manipulate the course. And that's the primary role of the instructor, is once this course is laid out, you need to look at this and go, well, each of those could take me 5 minutes if I dive in and the student just no trouble at all. Okay, looks like you got this. The rest of those are homework. And you're taking the remaining 15 or 20 minutes of that lesson, and you're saying, that's part of your homework. Let's move on. So this could take 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes total, or it could take, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours total if you really wanted to spend a half hour on each of those. So it's up to the instructor to take a look at that list and go, okay, based on my sense as an instructor, because I know this kid, I've been working with him for a couple of weeks, based on what I've seen on his practice tests, based on what I'm seeing right now in terms of his confidence and how he's approaching the problems related to that concept, I think this one, I'm just going to tell him to do his homework. I'm going to spend most of my time here and here, and I'll do a little treatment on rates, ratios, and proportions because I think he gets it, but we'll just do a little intro on that. And so the instructor is in charge of figuring out how to best use their time to get through all the content a little bit, or punt it, or delete it if it's something they don't need to do. Does that all make sense? I'm going to appeal to Simeon for kind of a check-in.
For me, it all makes sense. You've actually cleared up quite a lot. I don't see any questions in the chat, but let's open it up. Does anyone have any questions about where Matt is right now at this point? Looks like I got some thumbs up. Okay.
And one thing I want to stress is if you feel comfortable with this process, independent of your instructor, you're in a position where if you want to make it really simple for your instructor, you can lay out this course during the sales consultation or immediately after the sales consultation, because you'll know I got this practice test. I know how many hours I need to put on. So I know roughly speaking which template to use. And assuming you know the tutor's availability and the student's availability, you can lay this all out and then just hop on for 5 or 10 minutes with your instructor and just say, here were my observations from the sales consultation. Here's what they, their priorities are. Mom reports the student has trouble with this. That's why I laid out the course the way I did. But remember, tutor, it's totally up to you when you're going to show up on Sunday to take a look at this and go, okay, I got 10 things to get through. Some of these I'm not going to have time for, like parts of speech. I know he knows that. Adjectives and adverbs seems to be fine. Let's make sure we cover those, but we'll get rid of some of the homework drills. I can always reassign those later. So we'll say that one. And we're going to delete all those. Delete. And now I got a more manageable workload. I can always add content really quickly if I need to.
Awesome. Matt, a couple of questions. I have one, and then
Please.
I'm gonna let Chris. Chris also has a related question.
Okay.
So let's use March 2nd right now for the student. I know we didn't toggle over to student view. So there's 6 lessons. My question at this point.
Do you want to see the student view?
Yeah, does that mean that these 6 lessons are due on March 2nd, or does that mean that this is when this content has been released for this student to begin on March 2nd?
The second one. So that's what's going to be released. The reason there's overdue content is I deliberately started this course back on Friday. So everything from Friday the 25th was due on the 28th. Everything from the 28th was due today about a half hour ago.
Gotcha.
And that's just because of the way I set it up so that I would have the opportunity on the student side to see the difference on the to-do list. Otherwise, everything's in the future. It looks prettier, but it makes it so I can't really show you how it all interacts when a student's not doing all their work. But let me tackle Chris's question, and then I'll talk about the student experience because now we've laid out a course.
Absolutely. Chris, go ahead. Floor is yours, brother.
One question, thank you, sir. One question, 2 parts. Is this right now being recorded so tutors will view it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
so as mentioned, Chris, in the chat that I've done before, this is all recorded. This is really a tutor training. This is not really for owners. We're viewing it, but it's really for tutors.
Okay, great. So that leads to my second question then the purpose of what we're seeing right now is so that the tutor, rather than the tutor doctor manager, will be the one assigning all of this, and really so that the tutor has the opportunity, because they're so much closer to the student, then it's beneficial for both tutor and student for the tutor to be the one doing all of these assignments and tracking the practice testing and everything that's been demonstrated up to now.
Yep.
Yeah, I will say ideally, the owners will feel comfortable with obviously the sales process, and you'd feel comfortable either guiding the instructor or the tutor through the process of laying out a course template, or you can lay out that course template based on what you know. Like, I got the test, I know what the student needs to work on, I heard from mom and dad what our goals are. I can lay out this course and then have that quick conversation with your instructor where you say, here's what you're seeing on the screen, and here's what I'm looking for from you. We're going to be paring this down. We're going to be moving some stuff out of there, and we're going to be doing a treatment to make sure we address each of these. You can tell the student at any point, the rest of those are homework, because remember, the student has access to instant scoring and feedback, so they'll see how they did. They can watch video solutions for all the problems they missed, and then they can flag problems they still need to go over, or they're like, I don't get that one at all, even after watching the video. They can flag that, and I'll show you in a second where the instructor will actually can see those flags in order to know what to address at the beginning of the subsequent session.
Okay, and then just on the assignment piece, the last question.
Mhm.
So that a tutor won't under assign or concern of too much workload for the student, or over assign, thinking this one's got to shape up. Is there sort of a is there sort of a, I don't know, like a guideline or sort of an example set that a tutor, as part of the resources, could click on and see what sort of an average or, challenging but
Yeah.
not overwhelming workload would be?
Yes, a couple of things. One, the template's going to put in an ambitious workload in general. There are other templates, but in general, all the ones that are built in, it's a pretty ambitious workload. So they're expected to chop some things off, and they're expected to prioritize certain things and tell the student do that one on your own. So the template itself is going to provide some of that, but also the thing to communicate to them and just something to know as an instructor is these take as short or as long as you want them to, between about 5 minutes and 30 minutes, depending on the student's needs. So that's when you're just keeping an eye to see when the student is indicating to you, yeah, I got this, or this is boring, or I don't know what the heck we're talking about. Imaginary numbers? Yeah, okay, you've never covered imaginary numbers? We're bailing. We're not going to try to teach you how imaginary numbers work to, a 45-minute lesson or an hour lesson to try to pick up 1 point. Not worth it. So it's up to the instructor to decide how much to, or how far to dive in on each of these so that they can do at least a treatment on each of them. And then as far as a workload for the students, that's going to vary significantly according to whether the parents want to overload their kid or want to give you a hard time about assigning any homework at all. That's going to be probably the determining factor on that front. But as a general rule, come in hot. Wait till they tell you that's too much. My kid's overwhelmed. If they're willing to do the work, if everybody's on the same page, more is better.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, Matt.
Yeah. So I'm jumping back to this. Your question was, are they due on the day? Like this is February 28th. Let me go to March 2nd. Oops, let me go down to March 2nd. So here, March 2nd, you can see this is what's on that day. If I go to the student side, and we can scroll down to where's March 2nd. So these are going to be the things that are, well, here, I actually do it this way. Infographics reading. If I click on that, you're going to see due this week, due next week. Infographics reading, due on 3/9, but it's already been assigned. So the point I'm making there is that everything becomes available on the day that it is on the calendar.
Gotcha.
So the idea is that as a student, you don't have to worry about all the rest of that stuff. It's not on your to-do list. It's just what has already shown up. And the idea is that that's what you would cover that day with your instructor. Keeping in mind that students don't have a calendar. We debated that for a while. The issue is if you give students a calendar and a to-do list, they kind of go, well, which one's the hub? Which one's the thing that I check? And we ultimately, we decided to go with the to-do list because it feels less disruptive if a tutor is modifying things in the future on a to-do list. They just vanish, they're gone, you don't have to worry about them. You just keep your eye on the top of your to-do list, as opposed to a calendar where if things are moving on your calendar, it feels more intrusive.
Okay.
So let's talk student experience or the student side real quick.
Awesome. Yep.
All right. So as a student, what you can see is because I created this course sort of, I don't know, post-dated, it started last Friday. So I have work that was assigned on that Friday that was due on Monday, and stuff from Monday that was due today at 10:30 in the morning, Pacific time. So what you're seeing, excuse me, I have the option to click on any one of these to do anything that's available here. Now, this is a list of everything that's available. If I want to go to my workbook lessons to see something like what those of you who've been using this a long time, the lesson map, here's where you'd see something like the lesson map. It's kind of an updated version of that. Reading, writing language, or math. You can click on each of those to see that section of the workbook. So here's reading unit 1, general strategy, and the status of every lesson there. What's been assigned, what's available, what's completed, what is not completed. Now I haven't completed anything yet. So as a student, if I know what I'm looking for, I can go to the workbook lessons tab. I can search or I can filter to find what I'm looking for by, status. Oops, click down here. So if I know what I'm looking for, I can go to the workbook lesson. Same thing with worksheets, or I can just be a chill student and whatever pops up at the top of my list is the next thing I'm doing. Most students just stick with a to-do list, but you can use those to find things quickly. Tests also do show up on this to-do list. So some lessons, I'm clicking click to begin, are really simple. They're just reading assignments. Like you just need to read the basics about the format and content of the math SAT, and a couple of tips on how to improve your score, and some tips on knowing when you've been tricked, for example. This is just a reading assignment. It's 9 pages of sort of general overview about the math section. It's a thing that you use your best judgment. It's probably worth skimming with the student. When it's done, we're going to do this as a live student. I'm going to go ahead and click submit. And I've now completed that lesson. I'm going to jump back to my dashboard to-do list. You can see that that top item is now gone. It's not on my to-do list anymore. I can get to it later to review it if I want to in workbook lessons, but I'm on to the next thing and the counter is moving down. Now, a lot of these are actually, let me just find something fun. All right, we'll do homework drill number 3 from math unit 1. If I click here, again, you can see the answer sheet. This is the exact page out of the workbook, page 329, where they'll find it. And they can work from the screen if they want to. This is a pretty fancy PDF viewer. So if they want to, they can even zoom in to see the problem up close. We recommend that they actually do all of this on paper in their physical workbook and then punch in their answers all at once, submit them. And once they're done with that, again, statistically, that's what you expect for guessing randomly. They can actually review this. And if they click over here, they can see exactly which questions they missed. They can flag problems for review, and they can watch the video. So clicking here brings up the video, pressing play. Now, you're not gonna hear the audio because it's in my headphones, but you'll notice that I'm earning time for watching the video. But if I skip ahead because I'm impatient or I just want to know, the end, like I get it, I did that, that's the equation I used. This is most critical for the critical reading section where it's like, I know why it's this right answer, but why isn't it D? You want to skip to where the person doing the video actually says, oh, and D is wrong because boom, that's the piece that's the payoff. So you can skip forward, but you don't earn time for skipping forward. If you're still stuck, you click review. And what you're seeing now is a visual cue for both tutor and instructor. It's visible this way on both sides where you can see, okay, this is the problem. The student missed the problem. That's the correct answer. They watched a little of the video and they flagged the problem. As an instructor, if I'm seeing this, I don't want to see a student who's flagging or like performing poorly, flagging multiple problems and not watching any video. That's kind of insulting because that's like, I just want you to teach it to me. I can't be troubled to actually invest my time in this. So you do want to see them actually watching videos. We track all of that, and that's all in the progress reports. This is a good point to jump back to, which is where do I find out which problems have been flagged for review? Or what's this look like on the instructor side now that the student has completed this thing and flagged a problem for review? Simeon, that's where I'm headed. Does that make sense to you?
Makes perfect sense.
All right. So right up here, I just jumped back to the tutor side. Now I've got the calendar where I can see basically everything. Like I can click on, oops, that I don't remember which day we actually had that lesson on. Where's one I completed? that one was a homework one. I'm not seeing which one I actually did, but I think it's whatever.
You
All
signed
right.
it back in February, I think.
Oh, was it? I should have a 1 out of whatever, but maybe I didn't actually exit out of it, so it didn't mark it as complete yet. Anyway, more importantly, where do we go to find where we flagged problems for review? I'm going to go ahead and click on lessons. This is regrettably, this is a card view. We're improving this dramatically right now, spending an obscene amount of money to get it redone, but it's going to be a list view where you can compare all the things, sort all the columns. It's going to be fantastic, and that's what we're working on right now. All you need to know is that this is a list of all of the lessons that have been assigned. I can sort those. I can search for individual ones. I can also go here to more filters. This is a place where you would do a little bit of analysis on how's my student doing on all of their work. Here, you can see exactly what's been assigned, what's been completed, and so on. So what I'm going to look for is what's been completed. Now, something to note, this is a bug that actually, I think, Simeon, you may have brought this to our attention, but I had actually put in a help ticket for it earlier that week. I think next week this will be fixed, but right now for a reading assignment, when you've completed a reading assignment, it should default to, good job, not poor. You read that poorly, we suspect. Where I'm going with this is that when you search for completed, you can see everything they've completed. And right off the bat, you can see which one has flagged problems. But later in the course, when the student has completed a ton of work, you don't want to be scrolling down to find, oh, that one has a flag and that one has a flag. So right here, has flags is going to narrow it down to which of these actually has a flag that needs to be reviewed. Click on it. You can see exactly which problem, how much video they watched, and you watch the video yourself, or that's problem 1. You can zoom in on the problem right here to make sure you know how to solve the thing. The idea here is that when a student has completed work recently, the way you want to do this to find what you're looking for to see, okay, what did the student complete since our last session? Well, I can sort by due date. Generally is going to show you what you need to see there. Sort by due date, completed, has reviewed flags, or get rid of completed and you can do something like overdue work. And that's going to show you all of, oops, I need get rid of that one. So here's all the work that's overdue. And again, it tells you when it became available and when it was due. So using those filters, which again are cleverly hidden right here behind the little blue button that says more filters, you can do a whole bunch of different things. Filter by subject, by how the student performed. Again, I can click there to see which ones they're rated as having completed poorly. So that one. There's a lot of ways you can find what you're looking for with just a couple of filters there. And assuming I know there were a couple of frequently asked questions on that topic. Did I wander through them?
Yep, I believe you've hit it. I believe.
All right. Yeah, the most critical one is knowing that you would hit more filters, has review flags. That's where you're going to go to see exactly which questions a student needs to work on. And we have an interface that, as I said, is under construction right now. It's actually going to, these filters won't be necessary. It's going to show you a list of here's all the problems your student has flagged for review. And so that's coming as well.
Matt, quick question. So
yeah, please.
Clarification. Back to summary. So if we go back to summary, please. So
yes.
I logged in. I'm the instructor. I logged in. As the instructor, this is my dashboard for this. This is the student.
That's for this specific student. You want to go to the overall summary?
Well, even from here. So this is the student that I'm working with. Where do I see that an item has been flagged? In this case, it's showing a 0. But
yeah,
there's one that's been flagged.
That it may not have updated yet. I'm not entirely positive. Let me see. Here, I'll go back to that was lessons and more filters. Has flags. This one. So that one, yeah, I should be able to, as an instructor, I can I can handle that flag. Let me see. It's also possible they're working on this right now.
Yep.
So that should aggregate, you're right, over to the summary. That should have already updated. And if I click on it as an instructor, it goes down here to problems reviewed, so that it won't keep showing up at the top of your list. I'll have to check on that because that should have already updated. That's uncommonly slow that's not there yet. I'm sorry, that's not a better answer, but that's where that should show up, and it will.
That's fine. So Matt, there's a question that's on the table, but again, I don't want to take away from the demo flow. So Chris, if we could hold that one until the end, I promise I'll get that to Matt. I just want to make sure that we're getting through the entire demo flow that we've kind of articulated.
Okay.
All right.
So that, yeah, then I'm jumping back to the student side really quickly. Again, for students, it's super simple. You're just knocking things out as they show up on your list here. Overdue, hopefully you don't have anything overdue, then you're starting with what's due. There is a category called due soon, which would be between those two if you had something that's due in a couple of days. Oh, actually, I take that back. That's gonna be down here, due this week. So down here is due this week, and then all the way down here. Now you'll notice that tests and worksheets and lessons show up on the screen. I mentioned worksheets, which are not on this screen. We haven't assigned any worksheets yet. They weren't part of the template that I assigned. So the next step would be assigning worksheets. And first, why would I assign a worksheet? And like, what's the purpose of a worksheet? And secondly, how do I do that? So that's where I'm headed. Simeon, if there's another piece you want to see along the way, let me know. Otherwise, that's where I'm headed right now.
Yep, keep going. We're doing good.
Got it. So I am, again, I'm still logged in as a tutor. I'm clicking on that demo student I created. I've punched in part of a test. I've laid out the template. It didn't include any worksheets. So now I want to assign some worksheets. I'll mention this again. We've got over on the worksheets tab, we have a card view, which is not ideal. It's kind of a pain to compare all the things. The easier way to lay out worksheets is go to the calendar view, click on a day, click add new, click worksheet. And here's a list view of all the worksheets. The estimated time is, I think they're all entered as 15 minutes. They're generally speaking 15 questions. They go in some cases from like 8 to 25 questions. In fact, here you can see a whole bunch of them. The math are more standardized than all the reading and writing ones. They tend to vary more. I can show filters to do content type, which I'll talk about in 1 second. Category, these are all of the tags that are in our system and the number of worksheets that match that tag. And there are some zeros, just so you know. For the most part, there's 1 to 5 that match that topic. And I can filter by subject if I want to. I'm going to close that for now and just say we're going to do booster shot for elephants and a crossroad for safeties, two writing worksheets. I'm going to go ahead and click assign selected and continue. I'll add a due date. You've already seen this interface a couple times. And 11:15, I'm going to move that back a minute or back 15 minutes just so it's already available. There it is. And if I go over to the student side and I go to worksheets, there they are. So they'll pop up here, but they'll also pop up on that dashboard. If I scroll down to right here, due next week, they're due by default a week from now. So booster shot for elephants, student clicks on that and it's the exact same interface as they would have if it was a workbook lesson. The big difference is as a student, this isn't in my workbook. This is from our online database. And because it's from the online database, we strongly recommend that you have the student print it, take it on paper, and then punch in the answers. That said, if you want, there's no reason why they can't take it on paper or take it on the screen just like this, where they see the passage, they see the questions, they can punch in their answers. And it works the same way, where it'll score and analyze, and it'll queue up all the video solutions. They can flag problems for review. All of that goes to the same places you'd expect, where you can go to, let me flag a couple. On this side, if I, back on the instructor side, if I go to worksheets, on that interface, I'm going to be able to see the 2 worksheets that have been assigned, how I did, the fact that the student flagged something, which problems they flagged. And the other piece I was going to show you, I was actually going to check for my own benefit, is to see whether those have come through on the student's dashboard yet. Right here. There we go. Okay, so it did update it. That was slower than it should have been, but it did update. I now have the 1 from the lesson and 2 from the worksheet that I just flagged. So it's working properly, but too slowly there. But again, to find problems that are flagged, you go to either the lessons tab or the worksheets tab and filter for has flags. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Now, last piece about worksheets, then I'll move on. Worksheets are, there's 2 kinds. There are test style worksheets. These are both, the first 2 that I assigned are both test style worksheets. Just to show you, like if I click on that, you'll see this is a representative passage. The content, so there's the passage itself and then the questions that correspond with it. They cover all the topics, it's a potpourri of concepts, the way that a real test passage would be. If I skip back here and I'm on worksheets, it's going to take a second to load. It's a lot of worksheets there. If I want to assign, I'll do another worksheet here. Add new worksheet. I'm going to filter for skill builder. And I view the results. Now what you're going to see is a whole bunch of worksheets that deal with concepts specifically. So these are all targeting one specific thing. And what I'll show you, what do I have here? Let's see if I can search for what's being tested. So this is one of my faves. I'll go ahead and check that. I'm going to sign in and continue. Where are we? I don't care about a due date, so I'll go ahead and just submit. So there it is. And as an instructor, I'm going to scroll down to what's being tested. And right here, I can preview it. Skill builders are not designed to mimic real test questions. Skill builders, sometimes they're formatted as real test questions, but they're designed to give you that repetition of concept that you don't get from just using real tests. Which again, this is something to stress during score consultations, something to stress as a tutor about the value of this system is we give you repetition of concept in a way that you don't get from just sitting down with a bunch of practice tests. On a math section, you're going to do, oh, that one deals with a circle, and that one's polynomial long division, and that one's a linear equation. You're just bouncing all over the place. It's not a good way to study. So this one is one I came up with that all you have is answer choices to go on. And I want you to look at that and tell me what's being tested without even reading a question. So in this case, you can see that those are all, those are linking words or logical transition words. And so what you would need to know, and actually in order to solve it, is you have to see a passage to know what ideas are being linked, to know which one's the correct answer. But you can't answer that, but you can answer what am I being tested on? And so we just show you a bunch of answer choices, and then you determine what you're being tested on. Does that all make sense?
That is powerful. I don't know
Yeah, it's really handy.
I'm sitting here as a former math teacher. That's powerful. I didn't know that existed.
Cool. Yeah. So the skill builders are super handy. One word about worksheets. We are still cranking out new videos for them because there's about 1,400 worksheet questions. And right now there's about 200 videos that still need to be shot or repaired for a variety of reasons. Someone made a mistake or the audio got messed up or something. So the bulk of those are for worksheets. So it's possible you'd assign a worksheet that would have missing videos at this point, but that is something we're on pace to knock out this month. So just a heads up on that. The big question is, why would you want to assign a worksheet? Why not just go with the book or a real test section? It kind of fills a gap in the middle where you can hit them with the skill builder stuff. That's kind of the remedial, build them back up to what they need to cover. Then the only other advantage to the ones that are like test style is that instead of assigning a full test section, like, okay, here's, multiple reading passages, you could assign one reading passage if you want to give them a little bite-sized practice between sessions. Remember that you can also assign a full test section, not the whole test, but just the test. And you can assign an entire full-length practice test, which we recommend you do at least 3 times, because that's, they need help with the stamina training. They need help with their pacing strategy to actually practice that under real conditions. And you want to gauge your progress along the way to find out if maybe you need to tailor their approach a little differently for something like critical reading, where it's 3 kinds of students, roughly speaking. Ones that read very carefully, slowly through the passage and do the best they can and probably aren't going to finish, versus students who barely skim the passage, spend all their time in the questions, finding the answer and doing it that way, and that works great for them. And there's kind of the middle where there's this trade-off between those two, where it's map out the passage, spend more time in the questions, and make connections based on like, oh, I remember that information is here, here's where I go. So you may want to tailor their approach if after their second practice test, they're really struggling with whatever strategy they've been trying to implement on that. That's kind of a side note, but that's the importance of giving those full-length practice tests. Questions about any of that?
No questions from my perspective. Matt, I certainly want to make sure that we are cognizant of your time. And certainly when we put this out there, we put it out there as a 90-minute session. I mean, certainly if you can go long.
I can go a little longer. I need to
Yep.
leave at the absolute latest by 11:48, I'm going to say.
Yep.
Because
So
I got to.
if we can hit the parental report so that we understand
Absolutely.
how this data flows into the parent report
Mhm.
that parents receive on a weekly basis.
Perfect. So you've seen on the summary screen, we track a bunch of these things in terms of how much video watched, questions answered, problems for review, all of those things, on time percentage. All of that, if I go to the account tab, gets summarized into, and actually I should probably switch back to the other student I had, because that's going to give me more information on that. Although that student had like 190 overdue assignments, so this will work for us. I'm going to scroll down here. You're gonna have to forgive that this report's gonna be a little light on information, but let's go ahead and just do dad email. And we'll add that. So there's, once I've added an email, these buttons become active. I can CC the student, I can CC the instructor on all these parent emails that will go out on the day that I've selected, or I can preview and send now. And then I can CC anybody I want down here. I want to add, student's math teacher or something, whoever we want to loop in. So I'm going to preview. What you're going to see is, dear parent, as you know, we send down these score reports or these progress reports. So workbook lessons, how much work's been done? Worksheets now, student hasn't taken a full-length test. Ordinarily, you would see, here's how the student's done on full-length tests. To date, there's been an improvement of X number of points, and that's going to go, that's calculated by taking their initial practice test or their baseline score. If you entered one of those, it supersedes it. And it subtracts that from their super score, which is their best, the sum of their best section scores on all the across all the tests they've taken. So that's a little bit complicated, but it basically shows, here's all the tests you've taken and here's your improvement, but it's calculated the way you calculate a super score.
Okay.
And that bullet point would be up here if the student had taken some tests. Worksheets, number of questions answered correctly, 1 out of 11. Superb. Additional performance metrics, we keep track of the video, all those things, it's all in there. Now, if you want to send it right now, you click that. I'm not going to, because that's a fake email. But you can send that or trigger it to go out weekly. The other thing I'll tell you is, if you really want to, if there's something you want to change about it, you can very easily just, copy that, drop it into the body of an email, make whatever changes you want really quickly, and then send that out. I'll close that right now, but any questions about that?
No, I don't have any questions, but just this is more of a development question, because I think what was interesting about this one that I'm always talking with my parents about is how much of the actual video that the child is reviewed. In this case, I think it would be neat if it's somehow pulled and reported to parents.
Oh, sorry, that's in there. Is there
This one actually said 0, but I think it would be great if it said, of the videos, your child is only partially watching the videos instead of just, because it's actually taking an aggregate that says, hey, out of all of this, the student has done 19 minutes of video, but of the 19 minutes of video is really only parsed. They were only doing 1 minute and skipping. So again, that's a development. That's a development thing that you guys can kind of.
Yeah, I like what you're getting at. It's more powerful information to say that this student has watched this much video of a recommended this much video.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, has watched an average of 15% of the videos that were recommended.
Yeah, because then I think with something like that, it takes the onus to a certain degree off of the business owner. It takes onus off of the teacher and it places it on the student. Essentially, you want to come back and say it says, look, you own this, you have access to it, and you're not leveraging it and you're not using it.
I'm adding that to my notes really quickly.
In fact, maybe one way to tactfully and informatively state that is your student has watched 47% of the videos to completion and 53% of them to partial, or something like that. So they're fully informed, and it's going to let them know, wow, okay, we can take it up a notch.
Yeah, I'll just tell you the only challenge there is that because students are all different and instructors are all different, some students who are super diligent are watching 20 seconds of every video that they need to watch, where they're like, oh, I see what I did wrong, and they're getting everything they need to, and I don't want them to come across to mom and dad like they're phoning it in.
Yep.
Does that make sense? So that's always been the challenge. It's a little hard to deal with that.
So team, here's what we're gonna do. It's 2:27. Matt has a hard stop. I'm gonna turn this over to you guys and fire away with every questions. We've got him. We know Matt is hard to catch up with. So while we've got him, let's use him for every second. James, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, question just about this report here. Do the course start and end dates trigger the time frame for when these emails go out?
The answer to that is actually not currently. So what you want to do is we have an update coming, I think, next week that is going to include a toggle on off button. Right now, you'd have to just remove the parent email and then click save.
Okay, so there's no date associated when those are going out. Once you activate it, it's sending until end of time.
There is I'm trying to remember. I think it has something to do with. I'd have to double check. We had it the way it was built. I want to say there's a shut off if the student hasn't logged in for some period of time.
Okay, but maybe just a best practice then to CC ourselves on there so we can validate when those messages are.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you right down here, you can CC yourself, or if you're listed as the instructor, that actually sparks one other important thing I want to make sure I get across. To answer your question, yes, I would CC myself on that. You don't actually necessarily have to CC yourself if, when we go to students in general, I'm going to just search for students in general. Any one of these, you can see who is assigned as the student's instructor. And down here, you can see we got multiple instructors. So we got Simeon, who probably created the account and then assigned this instructor to that student. If I click on any one of those, in fact, I'll go back to my 3 E's. There we go. If I go to this one, I can go to account. Down here, I haven't assigned an instructor. So right now, this is just Simeon's student. I can assign instructors, including, 2 M's? 1 M or 2 M's? 1 M.
1 M.
Gotcha. So boom, add. I can assign myself as an instructor, in which case you'd be CC'd as the instructor. You can also add, again, any of your other instructors you want. I guess I don't want to do that. Do you have anyone on here as a fake instructor or has already moved on?
You can use that one, that fixes.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can add as many instructors as you want. And the beauty of that is that if you have a math instructor and a verbal instructor, they're both working with that student. And it's not like our old system where one of them had to manage the other to have access.
Okay, awesome.
Well, that's helpful. Real quick on the skills index sheet, are those only available through the worksheets?
We're talking about the worksheets? or sorry, the question was the skill builders?
Skill builders, yes.
Yeah, good question. So within the workbook lessons, there are a bunch of little like, your turn things, and they're built into the lessons. They don't show up in terms of where a student has to punch in their answers online to get credit, because we've always seen that as there's the initial challenge problem. There's sort of the tutor's toolkit, which is a couple of pages of like, here's information about how to solve that specific question. Here are some terms, all those things. And then there's little skill builders right there. And sorry, I'm gonna mute. The idea there is that you may not want to assign that to the student, and you don't want that to show up every time that they have to go back and do remedial work for things that you didn't dive in on with them. So they're available in the worksheet, or sorry, in the workbook, and the instructor has access to all the answers to those in their teacher edition workbooks. Which reminds me of two really important things I actually need to stress really fast. And then I'll jump to the next question. You remember we assigned a test to this student.
Yep.
Well, you remember that when the student logs in and when the instructor logs in, we don't see that test on the screen. For a variety of reasons, we don't show it on the screen. So the student's going to need a copy of that test in order to actually take that test. That is done by providing either a PDF or a printed copy to the student, which I'm going to open a new tab here, and I'm going to go to Help, Knowledge Base. I'll actually show you, you can get to the same place I just went by going right here in the Help resources, or right here where it says Help. You can click there, it's going to open this window. That is an autocomplete if you want to search for something. But the two things I want to really stress here are the access to the workbooks. If I click here, here are the student edition workbooks. You can click there to download a PDF. There's a couple of basic warnings in there about not stealing our stuff, but the ACT and SAT student edition, SAT, ACT, instructor editions are all available right there. So if you're doing virtual tutoring as an instructor, it's really helpful to have the student edition available on PDF so that you can put that up on the screen for the digital interactive whiteboard, mark up problems together with the student. So that's worth making sure instructors know where to find. The other piece is not the workbooks, but down here, official practice tests. And right here, practice test PDFs. We can click there. I'll click on SAT. There's some notes about how, hey, this is not for you to be selling these. And in fact, that you really don't want to be selling them. You can work with a student for free on it. And here are the links to those actual tests. So here's the March 2021 test. I can click on that. And right here's the actual PDF of the test. If you share a link, you can share this link. You do not want to be sharing this link because you'll be linking your student straight into the tutor resources with all of the answer keys. And ideally, like quite honestly, this is something that you probably want to have copies of those independently, just so you have a library of those available. That may be something that Tutor Doctor wants to do centrally rather than relying on all these links. But that's a different conversation.
Okay. There was a question by Chris, and I'm gonna have to lean on Chris to kind of clarify. What is the expected or recommended tutor prep and review time per student session or hours of the program? So Chris, can you clarify the question as it relates to the system versus if you're asking a question for, how long does it take for me to review the content, before I start working with a student? I just want to make sure
it was separated. Oh, no, understood. So first of all, Matt, yeah, thank you. I mean, it's this is a tremendous amount of evolution since you and I had our first conversation on a rainy January Friday in 2015, 7 years ago already. I cannot believe it.
Crazy.
But time flies, right? But great work. I remember the system then and being very impressed, blown away, and found it greatly superior to our book only thing we had before. So thank you. Thank you for the continued work you'll be doing. So really my question is this: aside from any content prep and all the other stuff, I mean, it is intermixed, as Simeon was just mentioning, to a degree. There is going to be some of the content. That said, what across all the companies and tutors that you have worked with, what is sort of the expectation or average, if you will, of time spent in preparation for a student, or let's say a typical 12-session preparation program, just so that the tutors and everybody, they could spend hour upon hour of diving into everything, but we just want to make sure it's manageable, but it's going to be effective.
Yeah, so a couple things. So great question, actually. I just moved my window and I don't like where I put it, so I'm going to move it back over here. First thing I would say is for onboarding an instructor, that's gonna be a little bit outside of the scope of this, but I will mention as an owner, you can create a new instructor, first name, last name, email, send a welcome, save, and they'll be able to access the system. They will arrive with a free practice student account. So they're going to show up with one of these who's already been activated. And with that account, they can, remember, they can impersonate that account. So they can log in as an instructor, they can log in as a student using the impersonation feature, and they can assign that student any work they want. There's a couple of applications for that. The first is if you are a dynamite math tutor, but you're not feeling super strong on the verbal and you've been asked to do some verbal, you can assign that student anything you want, the entire verbal workbook, worksheets, everything, full-length tests, and you can do as much of that work as you feel like you need to do as an instructor to get up to speed. You can also, if you want to abstract that a step or you want to back up, as an owner, you can say, hey, I know you're great at the math, no complaints, everything's good. I'm going to assign you a full-length writing and reading section to your practice student or your demo student. I want you to log in and knock those out. And here's the thing. You don't have to ace it, but you do need to be able to show up and explain to me how to solve the ones that you missed, just so I know that you're not looking at this and just going, oh man, this is beyond me. If you missed 4 or 5 questions, fine. Let's sit down really quickly and you just do a little demo, like here's how I would explain this to a student. I'm satisfied that you can do that, and I'm satisfied that you don't want to look like a dummy and show up and not be able to cover what you have scheduled for that session, which segues into, well, now I'm looking at a demo student, but let me go back to this guy. Calendar. If I know this is what I'm covering, I can go through, the workbook. I can check each of those to make sure, roughly speaking, I feel comfortable with them. Or I can literally click here to, whoops, not that. I can click here to see the answer sheet, to have access not just to the answer sheet, but the videos. Remember I mentioned there's a couple we're reshooting. That one's great out there. You can look over not just the material, but the answers, the difficulties, and video solutions for any of them that seem particularly difficult to you. So is there a recommended amount of time? It's going to depend mostly on the instructor's background. If they can do all this on the fly, less. If they want to show up looking like a genius, then they need to budget the amount of time that they can go, okay, lessons, go to my filters. I'm going to sort by assignment date. So I'll get the things that have been completed recently. And I want to do flags. I can expect that this student's going to ask me about this question. I should want to make sure I know how to solve this question. So if a student's flagging 12 questions, that's probably less than 10 minutes. Students generally aren't flagging like 25 questions a night or before each session. So the minimum I would say is enough time to review the problems that were flagged for the next session, so that you can show up again looking like a genius because you literally just reviewed exactly the questions they want to go over. It's a huge advantage instead of walking in cold and being like, oh, that one, I don't know that one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then so that said, in a way to sort of preserve time and do it in real time, is it still sort of suggested that while a student during session is working on a question or a section, like a time section, the tutor could have their device and basically go through and sort of search for worksheet or create worksheets that are topical for that student's needs, that they could do that while the student's doing their work and therein being better prepared and really saving time. That's
as long as, so I just have two answers to that really quickly. One, your tutor's probably going to have devices there with them, whatever. If they're assigning work that the student's doing independently with, like no oversight, like take 10 minutes and go, be good if they're doing something productive. That is productive. However, if you can get a clear table, nothing on it, there's also a benefit to that. So it's a trade-off. What I would say is when you notice that a student is struggling with something, that's when you're going to want to go, okay, I need to give them some additional stuff. Let's go to the worksheets and find something for that. So at the very least, you would either need to be making a note of that or boom, assigning the thing. But the student's not gonna be able to take that until it's been printed and delivered, or the student's got to take it on their device on the screen, which isn't the best form of practice. So the urgency of creating that in the moment, I don't think there's a huge benefit to creating it that second, as long as your instructor takes 5 minutes afterwards to make sure that like, okay, here's what's coming up for next session. I know how to do all that, and I wanted to assign these worksheets. That would be totally adequate.
Good either way, and yeah, if they can make gainful use while a student's working through, say, a practice section or something, this way they can queue it up, load it up, and be doing something productive rather than watching the student work hard.
Or cat videos, yeah, right. Like we want them to be engaged at the very least, either watching the student and providing some feedback or curating the course. So sure.
And by the way, I hear cat videos will be part of the new SAT, but I digress.
So the cat video section, yes.
Yeah, and and for the purposes of the tutors watching this, certainly as it relates to that, the question that's kind of on the table, it's really going to vary. So you really have to talk directly with each of your individual location owners in terms of how your tutor sessions are actually structured, in terms of what that looks like. Everybody, it's all going to vary in terms of what your prep time needs to look like for both the content, for both the system. So certainly make sure that you have that dialogue individually with your specific location owner so that you can structure and plan accordingly.
I didn't get into group courses at all. That may be a thing we do as an addendum. That's not really the bread and butter for you guys, but if you want to know anything about group classes, everything works basically the same way. You just get to assign it to the whole group at once.
Yeah.
So
Venkat, you had a question. I know you came off a mute a while back, and then you had
sorry.
So
yeah, sure.
Yeah. We got about 5 minutes left.
Sure, no problem. Hey, Matt, do we have any kind of a best practices listed out somewhere for the tutors, so that way, like if I am onboarding, because what happens is we have had tutors who have been working with your system, like for 1 year, 1.5 years, and then we have adding more people. So what I see is really, I think there is an opportunity to have our tutors to engage more with the system. So probably,
I agree.
My guess is that, okay, they're not doing it maybe because they don't know what they don't know. I think having a quick refresher, or maybe creating like some kind of a video bites. Okay, this is the best practices. This is similar to this training. But anything we can provide as a group that would be helpful. To get up to speed. To get the tutors up to speed and encourage them.
I'll show you what I'm using right now and what you can expect. Just as an example, I'm clicking over here to this amazing plugin called Scribe. I don't know if you guys have used it, but it's incredible. Start recording. And what I would do is I go over here, I click here. I want to see a worksheet, and it's going to open that. And when I'm done, assign worksheet, whatever. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and Scribe opens this new window where it's put together. So here's what we did. You navigate to this website, you click live demo, you click worksheets, and then it just puts this together for you. It's incredible. So that's what I'm using to put together the best practices instructor, like all the really carefully focused A, B, C, D. Here's the workflow for exactly how you do this. The challenge has always been that there's decisions you have to make along the way, and it gets really complicated when there's a tree of like, you might want to do this, or if you're using it for a group, it gets complicated. I'm putting together these as instructional documents that I have an LMS I'm using that will have a standalone instructor onboarding course that will be greatly streamlined. as opposed to what we've had in the past, which is sort of a long hour-long thing. And a lot more overlap between help resources and that onboarding course. So the short answer is, I think what you say, they don't know what they don't know. Totally agree. It's a thing I've been working on, and like I said, I plan to be delivering this right around the same time that we are delivering the vastly improved list views for those 2 remaining screens. And that's going to be a really good time to roll that out. The better time being yesterday, but we'll be getting you that shortly. And as far as I think I could probably put together a shorter, 15-minute video of just best practices, like for questions that are more overarching, like when should I assign full-length tests? And what do I do before a session? What do I do right after a session? Some of those things I'm making up policy on your behalf. You probably have a policy for what they do right after a session. So I got to be a little careful with dictating that, but I certainly could put together that document, and then you guys could, cut off the problematic pieces.
Awesome. So Matt, I know we've only got about 1 minute left. And again, I want to make sure that we respect everybody's time. Certainly thank you to everybody for jumping on. Don't forget, the purpose of this is really for your tutor. So certainly once the Zoom and all of this is finished and Matt has, kind of exported this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this link out to everybody via the Facebook and or via email. Please, a couple of things. One, send it to your tutors. Again, it's for their consumption primarily, more than anything. Have them go through it, have them utilize it, have them go into the, you create a sample account or whatever it is. If they just haven't started using it, have them give us feedback. So again, it's not necessarily that it's an answer, end all be all, and this is kind of a one and done, but it certainly is something better than what we've had in the past. And it's just something that kind of gets us started. So by all means, please get your tutors to utilizing, have them watch the video, have them go through the scenarios with you, if you will, so forth and so on. That being said, I'm going to touch base with Matt at a certain point. Want to make sure that we recognize certainly where he is on the schedule. I don't quite know where we're going to fit in another session because again, it's all of us. Our tutors are probably at work right now. They're probably teaching their kids and doing whatever it is that they want to do. So we're going to try to have to identify another time where we can have the majority or many of our tutors on. We don't quite know when that's going to be, but again,
I could do evening as well. If that would work better for people, I could try to do an evening session with you.
So let's sync up, Matt, and let's kind of look at something, maybe a month from now as kind of a follow-up to this particular session. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you guys so much for jumping on. Thanks for your participation. You guys have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful evening. Matt, thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.